Hello everyone. So this is the continuation of our tutorial series about mental calculation for basic mathematics problems. This is actually part 4. So if you're not able to watch part 1 to part 3, you may watch them in my YouTube channel. So today we're going to discuss the square root of any whole number from 100 to 10,000. And as what I've said in the part 1 of our video or of our tutorial series, that it actually requires mastery or practice for you to really be able to apply this one in a very short period of time. So suppose we are asked, what is the square root of 121? We will start with this, and eventually we will proceed to a more difficult problem as we move forward with this tutorial. So the first step that we have to consider is to memorize this table of, what is this? Table of squares, or the squares from 1 squared to 10 squared. Of course, we have 2 squared is 4, for example. We have 3 squared is 9, and so on. And then suppose we are asked about the square root of something. So we have to look first at the magnitude of the numbers starting from the hundreds digit. So here, for example, we have the 121, as we know. The one on the rightmost digit is what we call as the ones digit, and we have this one as the hundreds digit. So we have to look on the hundreds digit, and obviously from this example, the magnitude of the hundreds digit is 1. We have this one. And then step number 2 is to look for the square of the numbers from 1 to 10 and see where the result from step 1 lies. Your finding is the first digit of the square root. So we have here 1, and we have to compare this one to these squares. No? So obviously, 1 is the first digit of our square root. And step number 3 is to find the last digit, and to find it, we have to look at the ones digit of the original number, which is 121, and compare it to the table of squares. So basically here we can see that we have the ones digit is 1. Okay, so only 1 and 9 have actually squares, or actually have squares ending with 1. But obviously, we cannot have 19, no? Because 19 squared is obviously greater than 121. So the answer is 11. So suppose we want to try this one. What is the square root of 169? So again, the same method. We have to look on the hundreds digit. So we have here in 169, we have the magnitude of the hundreds digit is 1. And then obviously, 1 squared is equal to 1, which is the first digit of our square root. And then we have to look on the digit of the ones digit. It's actually 9. And from this table, or from this list of squares, we can see that only the number 3 whose square ends in 9. Therefore, the square root of 169 is 13. Now let's try a slightly hard problem. Okay, suppose we want to find out the square root of 841. So again, we have to look on the hundreds digit. So we have the magnitude of the hundreds digit is 8, obviously, from this problem. And then we have to compare 8 from this list of squares. And as we can see, 8 is between 2 squared and 3 squared. Now, because 2 squared is 4 and 3 squared is 9, which means that the first digit of the square root is either 2 or 3. It's impossible for it to become 4, or we have to forget the remaining squares because obviously it's only between 2 and 3. However, we know that 3 squared is 9. Thus, it's obvious that 30 squared is 900. So the first digit of the square root is obviously 2 because we reject 3, because 900 is greater than 841. Now the last digit of this number, 841, is 1. And only the numbers 1 and 9 have squares that ends in 1. Now we have 1 squared is 1, and 92 squared is 81. So we have the choice, no? The answer could possibly be 21 or 29. But we know that 2 squared is 4, which means that 20 squared is 400, which is closest to 21 squared. And as we know, 841 is greater than 20 squared. Therefore, the square root of 841 is 29. Now, let's try this difficult problem. What is the square root of 7,569? So again, we have to look on or at the numbers from the hundreds digit going to the left. Now, so we have the hundreds digit starts from 5. So the magnitude of the numbers from the hundreds is obviously 75. And 75 is between 8 squared and 9 squared. No? So we have 8 squared is 64 and 9 squared is 81. So the first digit of the square root is either 8 or 9. But as we know, if 9 squared is 81, then obviously 90 squared is 8,900 or 8,100, which basically is greater than 7,569. So we reject 9, and the only surviving possible first digit is 8. Now the last digit of this number, 7,569, is 9, and only the numbers 3 and 7 have squares that ends in 9. Now we have 3 squared is 9, and we have 7 squared is 49. So the answer is either 83 or 87. And we know that 85 squared from our previous tutorial is actually 7,225, which is smaller than 7,569. So obviously, the square root of 7,569 is 87. So I guess that's all. If you have some queries or questions or suggestions, you may just type it in the comment section of our YouTube channel, or you may just send them via email. Next tutorial, we will be discussing the cube root of any whole number. I guess that's all.